Lep pozdrav vsem skupaj, ki ste prišli. Ker je časovna stiska za gospoda ministra, ki leti iz Brnika nazaj v Barcelono, smo spremenili koncept tega dogodka, prav tako pa nam je nekaj panelistov odpovedalo, tako da bomo dogodek potekal malo drugače, ne kot okrogla miza, ampak bolj kot ne zgovori. Seveda nam je veliko čas, da gostimo zunanjega ministra Katalonije, gospoda Alfreda Boša. Z nami sta tudi poslanec v Evropskem parlamentu, gospod Milan Brglez, in pa državna sekretarka na Ministrstvu za pravosodje, Dominika Švarc-Pipan. Bi pa kar začel z dogodkom, tako da najprej vabim k besedi Andreja Omrstela.
Dear Catalan friends, dear Alfred, it's a great honor to be able to have you as a guest at our event. The purpose of us gathering here today is to get acquainted with the situation in Catalonia. We noticed a wave of violence against peaceful protesters on social networks and in the news, all perpetrated by the Spanish authorities. Here and now, in Ljubljana, in the so-called hero city, we have to loudly and clearly empathize that violence is never a solution. Dialogue is what is needed. We have to sit and talk. Peaceful protests that are currently happening are mainly attended by young Catalonians. Young people represent the engine of peaceful revolution. With their presence in the streets, they are expressing their disagreements with Spanish authorities. While watching the videos of peaceful protesters being beaten by the police, our hearts are breaking. The least of what we can do is to give support publicly, and with that, join you in the call for representing human rights. In Slovenia, we remember who stood by us when we needed help. It's time for us to stand by you. No matter the consequences, we proudly stand by you in defending the human rights in Catalonia. Ladies and gentlemen, the year is 2019, and in the heart of European Union, a union which is based on human rights and liberties, we have political prisoners that have been sentenced cumulatively to 100 years of prison. 100 years for someone who peacefully and democratically acted out his rights as citizen. This is causing us to question the reality of democracy in Europe. Slovenia must insist in the restoration of dialogue between Barcelona and Madrid. Only dialogue can help resolve the situation in which we find ourselves. We cannot allow the continuance of violence. Let me repeat. Violence is never a solution. We need to sit and talk. As an old saying goes, friends are like coins. Better to have 5 coins for 20 cents than 100 coins for 1 cent. Dear Alfred, with great pleasure and pride, we can tell you that you are our friend. Thank you.
Hvala, Andrej. Naslednjega k besedi vabim gospoda Brgleza.
Thank you very much. What I would like to do is actually provide a context and on the other side a structure on the case of Catalonia. Why human rights and why the situation in Catalonia is becoming a human rights situation also for the European Union, for Spain, for Slovenia, for Catalonia, for actually practically everybody. This was a process. Now we have also, legally speaking, some indicators that things can be done also without or outside of the context of the, let's say, Spanish Constitutional Court or Spanish legal order. Because this is of paramount importance actually for the entire European Union. I will start with simple thesis. Rule of law is not the same as a rule by law. And a rule in law is mostly invoked by everyone not taking care about this issue. Everything is going according to laws, but those laws has been adopted as there is no constraint within the international community, no constraint on the state. But actually there are. As long as we have a community, either international community or the European Union, there are constraints. And a rule of law has a sense only when it respects and promotes human rights. This is the foundation. It cannot be rule of law first, human rights second. They are foundation, they are the basis. So what I would like to see in this conflict is actually that legal interpretation, which has been developed so far, will be followed also by political consequences. But I know that, the force of argument is not the same as the force of power, either within institutions or outside institutions. Nevertheless, let's start with the beginning, or at least with the beginning when international community see that something has been wrong. This means in 2017. At that time, even our parliament said some things which has been not taken seriously on one side by the government, not informed other governments within the European Union what is the position of the parliament, but some of those issues are fundamental. One of those has been also that the right to self-determination belongs to every nation or every people. By international law. It was clearly said by international law. At that time, separation between Spanish law on one side and international law was paramount, and it was always invoked as something which is unbridgeable, so that nothing can be done on the European level. But this was more, let's say, political pragmatics than something else. Because even within international law you have some indicators that also the right, the principle, or the norm of self-determination exists. Either Declaration of Seven Principles, this is most basic principles of customary international law, but also within treaty law, both conventions on political and civil rights, and on the other side also economic, social and cultural rights starts with self-determination clause. And all those conventions has been ratified by all European states, including Spain. So it is very hard to interpret it, that there is nothing in international law which will be somehow obligatory, but it hasn't been interpreted the way that it should be. But this was the beginning. The main turning point for me, or at least for that also EU law of the European Union is actually applicable, has been European elections. On those elections, 3 members of the parliaments has been elected. They make a candidacy. It was the decision of Spanish authorities with all requirements which were there, that they can stand as a candidates, and those has been Puigdemont, Junqueras, and Comín. And all those actually get elected. But despite election commission published results in Spanish official gazette, because they didn't take all conditions, or because they didn't fulfill all conditions which have to be fulfilled, swearing before the Spanish constitution within the premises of the parliament, basically Spain didn't inform European Parliament that they has been also elected. So they sent different list. On this issue so far, Parliament done basically nothing. also European Commission basically nothing. It was impossible to pose it on the agenda. There was also request by Puigdemont and Comín for the temporary measures, which was denied. So the case as such is still open to the European Court of Justice. But these things actually changed last week, or this week actually. 5 days ago, the Advocate General, Maciej Špunar, published his opinion, which is mostly followed also then by the court, on a case on a preliminary decision requested by Spanish Constitutional Court, how to interpret immunity or immunity of the EU, which has been invoked by Junqueras in the next stage after being sentenced. And what follows from there is that the question of procedural immunities, the question of acquiring immunity is something which should be governed by EU law, not by Spanish law, as was so far claimed also by European institutions, including European Parliament. So this is, let's say, first very strong argument why those three at least require parliamentary immunity. And what is importance of this parliamentary immunity? This is procedural part of the immunity. The only one who can say that someone do not have the immunity, also, this is very similar in all parliaments, is the parliament itself. No one else. And this is European issue. And even if things will go another direction, if at the European Court of Justice they will somehow, by force or not, I wouldn't say by force of their argument, being able to have another decision denying it, this same reasoning will be very important also at the European Court of Human Rights. And then European institutions, including European Parliament, would be those violating human rights. And I have to speak up as a member of European Parliament against such things. This is one of the issues where, let's say, someone would need huge support. On the other side, what is also important, that Parliament, by its own procedures, have a possibility to do it also, let's say, politically, because there should be a decision of jury on all those mandates, which in comparison to national parliaments comes after and not before the constitution itself. And this is very, very important. And what is also important, that in this opinion, the beginning of such parliamentary immunity is from at least, it can be even before, but it is at least from a day when the Parliament as a whole has been established. It cannot be denied even for those not having all the conditions for the exercising the mandate, because these are two different things. One is conditions for exercising the mandate. This can be done also by national law and by European law, but acquiring the mandate itself depends on the will of the people, on the elections. This is active and passive right to election. This is most fundamental for democracy. So I'm saying that at the end of the day, if things are not solved politically and not by dialogue, you have just two possibilities. It just depends who will lose, either democracy or Spain. It is simply as that. This is the symptom, I would say, at the moment that we have really the problems with human rights within the European Union. This is not just the denial that European Union and particularly even European Court of Justice do not want to be member and with that subjugated to European Court of Human Rights. This is not just that. The problem is that even the most basic documents of human rights in the current climate, either within the European Union or in particular some states, cannot be adopted. There is no will to go into that direction. And because they has been adopted historically, it is very important actually that we stand with them and that we see the problem of human rights there. And it is also the problem with all those sentences, because they has been disproportionate, because they go against the will of United Nations bodies responsible for human rights supervision. And you know, this is a lot of those things which can be somehow invoked. But this one, which I specifically mentioned and analyzed, I think it is the one actually, it is very hard to say because I cannot predict what will happen in the European Parliament as a whole, because I'm just one member. But it is something which legally cannot be turned back. You cannot just turn around and see this is nothing, this is, you know, covering everything under the ground. You have to do something about it. And I will try to do, because I have tried also so far. And things are open, Spanish elections are over. Political pressure not to go into that direction is over, and now is the right time also for our friends from Catalonia, and on the other side also for my friends from Spanish Socialist Party to start talk. Without talking, without dialogue, there is no political solution. Thank you.
Najlepša hvala. Zdaj pa k našemu osrednjemu gostu. Please welcome Foreign Minister for Foreign Affairs of Catalonia, Mr. Alfred Bosch.
Lepo pozdravljeni. Hvala, Mladi forum. Hvala. No pasarán. This was heard in the streets of Madrid, Barcelona, other cities in the Spanish Republic 80 years ago. And this was a battle cry of much more troublesome years than what we're living now, fortunately. Now, to stop fascism, those who would not pass, there were more than 500 Slovenian volunteers who went to fight. Almost half of them, 231, lost their lives in those streets and in those trenches. And the Slovenian brigade had very clear in mind that solidarity was important, that the fight against fascism, that the struggle for democracy, that the struggle for human rights, the struggle for dignity and decency was something that at that point should be fought on Spanish soil. And they were so convinced of this that, I insist, almost half of them lost their lives. Some of them are buried in graves which have not been identified, because there's still a problem, which you don't have so much in Slovenia, but there's still a problem there of digging up the graves, identifying the bodies, and paying homage to those people, to those freedom fighters. Now, even if the graves are still there and still covered with soil, we can constantly, every single day, remember them and pay homage to them. Right now, here, in this hall, every day. When President Torra from Catalonia came here some months ago, he set up a plaque, a sign, in order to remember Frank Rosman Stana, who was just one of these volunteers fighting for freedom and fighting for dignity in those times. Now, this was 80 years ago. Fortunately, those times of turbulence and war are over. In the years leading to 1991, in Slovenia, there was another struggle for freedom and for decency. And most of Catalan citizens back home, I remember it very well, in the Catalan parliament, even the Catalan government, we said, no, we must stand by Slovenia, because their cause is our cause, because we share this, because we have to walk together. We will never walk alone on this road. We have to stand by justice. And it was done. And then again, there was another, no pasaran, that was like spoken together by brave people in different parts of the world. And now again, unfortunately, we have to say again, no pasaran. We have to say to those who are not in favor of democracy, who are not in favor of something as basic as dialogue, as talking, we have to tell them, no pasaran. We have to tell them that we are together with you and with other brave people of the world. And our struggle is again your struggle. And we can see it here in this hall. And as you say, or as you sing, Jiva naj usi narod. God bless people, all the peoples, all of them, standing together for freedom, for justice, for the struggle in the field of human rights and of all other fundamental rights. So what do we have in Catalonia right now? Fortunately, I insist, these are different times. There's still struggle, but it's peaceful, it's civic, and it's based on the claim for dialogue, for talking, for finding a democratic settlement to the problem. We are not imposing anything on anybody. If they tell you that, please deny it. We're not imposing a Catalan republic on anybody. We are not trying to impose that. We are saying, let's talk to see how the people can decide. Can we surrender on that? No. Why? Because that's democracy. We cannot surrender on democracy. I'm sorry. Nobody can ask us to say to our people, you will not be able to decide your future. It's impossible. It's against basic human principles. It's against dignity. It's against the task we have as politicians. We owe our job. We owe our position to the people. And we must devolve it to the people. So the people have to decide. And it's as simple, and it's as powerful, and it's also as complex as that, as we can see. And how do we get there? Well, obviously, instead of repression, instead of using force, we have to use words. Because politicians have to make politics. That's what people expect from us. And we have to do it in a peaceful, civilized, responsible manner. And the best way we know to do that is sitting around a table and talking. And we sit and talk with whoever wants to do it. We want to do it with the Spanish government, with the powers of the state in Spain, of course. Because they are our political opponents, not the Spanish people, not the Spanish nation. We are friends with them. We have relatives across borders. We share many things. We share the Spanish language, apart from Catalan, of which we are proud. And we are proud of Spanish culture and literature, obviously. We're proud of that. We want to keep that. We don't want to lose opportunities. So it's not a question of hating. We're not haters. That's not the issue. We're not going into that domain. We want to sit and talk with the Spanish government and the powers of the state. We want to sit and talk with anybody in the world who's willing to do it and to help in democracy, to help in dialogue, to help in human rights. We want to sit and talk with the Slovenian people and with their representatives and with the officers who are in charge of running a country as beautiful, as friendly, and as close in many aspects as Slovenia. We want to do it also. And that's what we came here for, to sit and to talk. Nelson Mandela used to say that if you want peace, and of course we want peace, you have to talk with your opponents, especially, precisely with your opponents. It's easier to talk with friends. And possibly you can coincide and you can share so many things. Sometimes you share so many things that it's much more useful to speak with your opponents. Why? Because you're forced to do this. If you seek peace, and we do, especially, we have to talk with our opponents, with our political rivals. That's the way we can make some progress. We can advance. We can change things. We can keep a civic, peaceful, democratic environment. And that's why we want to do it. Now, we want dialogue, but we've been sitting at the table before the referendum 2 years ago, during the referendum, the days after the referendum. To this day, we're still sitting on that table. And there's nobody in the chair opposite. It's an empty chair. So what we're saying is, please, sit down. Let's get down to talk. Furthermore, we have a proposal. Now, you might like our proposal, you might not like it. And we're not coming to Slovenia to say, stick to our proposal. Stick to the Catalan Republic. That's because that's something which might be uncomfortable for you, but furthermore, it's something which we have to deal with. It's not for Slovenian people to decide on that issue. But there is something previous to that. We need talks, and that's a universal principle, and in that sense, yes, there we claim for international support, for dialogue. And there's something else. We want this to be solved in a democratic way. We're in Europe, come on. We're in the 21st century. We're not in the Middle Ages. So let's do it in a civilized manner, which belongs to the century and to the part of the world in which we live. And that's something which universally and very significantly in the European continent or in the European Union should be very clear. We have to do this democratically. And there, yes, we obviously ask for support in the field of democracy, of human rights, of dialogue, of peace, the fundamental values of Europe. The solution is Europe. The solution is the European way. Sometimes they ask us, which is your way, which is your path? Well, it's the Catalan path, obviously. It can be no other. But it's also the European path. Europe was founded after two great catastrophes, where Europe almost committed collective suicide. A very sad moment in our history. We should feel embarrassed and ashamed of what Europe did during those years in the 20th century. But the Europe which came out of that, we have to be proud of that. It must be improved. This Europe needs our contribution, collaboration. We need to work on that. But we must be proud of that, because it was founded on fundamental values which have enabled us to keep peace and to build on democracy, human rights. And that's the way we want to do it, obviously. And there, yes, we are asking you, as fellow European citizens, to walk the same way, the European way. You're European citizens. Before, we were getting an example of what was happening in the European Parliament. And those representatives were elected by more than 2 million European citizens, like you. And they're also your representatives. They're mine, and they're yours. And we're all European, so we should all fight for this, to clear this up. No way we cannot accept 3 representatives, 3 members of the European Parliament being vetoed by a member state or by state bureaucracies. No, it's the voters, it's the citizens who have to decide. Again, basic rules of democracy. Government for the people, by the people, with the people. What's the problem right now? We're not getting any dialogue. Mr. Sanchez, the Spanish premier, acting premier, he might be confirmed, probably he will. He's not even picking up the phone when the Catalan president calls him. Is that the way to deal with this issue? Does that make things better? Does that make things worse? And who has a problem with dialogue? Who has a problem with talking? Does Mr. Sanchez have a problem with dialogue? Let's pick this up. I don't like things falling. Yes, we're not gonna drop any microphone, any method for making our voice be heard all over the world. So, no. Who has a problem with that? Why do they have a problem? Is it because they know that when they sit at the table, they'll have no alternative proposal? We do have one. We think the people should vote for the future. Everybody, all citizens, those who are in favor of our political ideas, those who are against them. Everybody, 100%. This applies to everybody. Now, what's the alternative proposal? Is there any? Can there be any alternative proposal? Is it because of that we're not initiating talks? This is a moment where windows are opening in the Kingdom of Spain. You, from the socialist tradition, you, from the social democratic field, can talk to the socialist party, the PSOE in Spain. You can talk to the socialist youth in Spain. In fact, we encourage you to do that, and tell them what is the problem with dialogue. What is your problem with dialogue? And you can do something. You can help. You can help these people. You can help Mr. Sanchez. You can help the socialists in Spain. You can help the socialist youth to stop hurting themselves, to stop damaging their ideas, their principles. Because who really believes that socialists in Spain are not for democracy? I don't. Who really believes that they're not for human rights or for something as basic as dialogue? Obviously they're not. Then why isn't this widely accepted? I'm sure it will. But we need your help there. And we need the help of all those in the world, especially progressive people, who have it very clear in mind that the only good way to solve this is to go to the negotiating table. And you can help a lot, because you have friends in there, because politically you are close, and they will listen to you. Perhaps the first time they get a bit upset. The second time, perhaps not so much. The third time, or the fourth, or the fifth, who knows, as soon as possible, they will say, gosh, you were right. When you started telling us that we should do this, you were right, because this is the proper way to do things. Who believes that you can solve the problem and the issue, the Catalan question, who believes you can solve it with jail? 100 years of jail for 9 people, 100 overall, for these 9 people. Some of them my predecessors, most of them, members of the previous government in Catalonia. What they did was organize a vote. Is that a crime? Can that be considered a crime? Certainly, it's not a crime in Spain. And that's where you find the law being twisted around for the sake of political revenge and for the sake of political punishment. That is not acceptable. Again, I insist, we're in the 21st century. That, on a moral ground, that's not decent. We cannot accept it. Not in Spain, not in Slovenia, not anywhere in the world. So, the solution is not repression. The solution is not pushing people into exile. The solution is not suspending the Catalan government. The solution is not dissolving the Catalan parliament, by the way, completely legal, legitimate, and constitutional. So if there's something unconstitutional, that's doing away with these elected bodies, which are foreseen in Spanish law and in the constitutional framework. So obviously something is not being done the correct way. It's not with censorship and with cutting down on liberties and freedom that you will achieve a solution. You'll probably get very far away from the real solution. You will only make things worse. And we have seen it. These last years, have things improved? Have things improved in Catalonia? Have things improved in the Kingdom of Spain? No. And we have seen with the European Parliament, with the European Court of Justice, we have seen it in United Nations, 2 pronouncements of the Working Group on Arbitrary Detentions, which depends on the Council for Human Rights of United Nations. I'm talking about United Nations, the United Nations of the world, making international pronouncements, saying these detentions of Catalan leaders were arbitrary, that they should be released immediately as political prisoners, that compensation should be sought for, that an investigation, an independent investigation should be initiated to see how this could happen. That's what United Nations is saying, through this body which is integrated in the United Nations system. So, who wants the Spanish socialists, or the Spanish government, or the Kingdom of Spain in general, to get into all this trouble? Nobody. And I'm sure they don't want it themselves. So let's help them. And let's help them to get out of this mess. Because this leads nowhere. Well, yes, it can lead to a much worse scenario. But nobody wants that, really. So, yes, you can help a lot. You can help by telling the socialist family in Europe that things have to be corrected, that dialogue has to be initiated. There's a window of hope, I told you before, with this deal between the socialists in Spain and Podemos on the alternative left. Well, perhaps they will need our votes in the Spanish parliament. So I think there we can do some progress. Let's see if things can be corrected in the proper way. And in the European way, which is through free speech, through dialogue, through peace, through human rights, democracy. That's the proper way to do it. So I have to thank you. I have to thank you for giving me the opportunity of coming here and telling you all this. You will make your own judgment. You're intelligent people, you're independent-minded, and you feel free. You have proven it. And I would like to say thank you to the committee which has been formed, led by Mr. Milan Kucan, for political prisoners. I would like to thank those in the European Parliament representing not Slovenia, European citizens as a whole. I would like to thank also Secretary of Justice, who knows a lot about justice. I would like to thank also the Social Democratic Party of Slovenia. I think that you're open enough, and your history proves that even when you might have some doubts, you might question yourselves about the correct way to do things, finally, Social Democrats in Slovenia have always proven to history that finally, as Andrej says, they choose the right side of history. And I'm sure this will happen. I'm sure, I'm positive, absolutely sure that this will happen. And I would like to thank the outcoming board of Mladi Forum. You have been very brave. You have been very young, which is probably one of your functions. By saying no matter what the establishment might feel, no matter what their doubts might be, we have to do the proper thing. We have to stand up and speak up. Because we're young. And because when you're young, If you're not brave, you're not young. You're prematurely old. And you have shown that that's not your case. You are not. You have very clear in mind what political ethics are about. And I would like to say to all of you, showing the way, showing that change in a very moral sense is possible, I would like to say, hvala. Hvala. And I would like to say hvala, and let me say it in a very personal manner, to two persons who have stood up and have been very brave. Andrei, Giga, I think you have set the course. Perhaps you're not completely aware of what will come after this, but I'm sure history will come after this. And you have stood tall, very tall. So I have to say, in a very personal way, thank you. Thanks to you for sustaining hope, for making history. Thank you for your generosity, for your sacrifice, for your commitment. We know it has been hard. It has been very tough for you. But you have had the moral standard which is needed in nowadays politics. You've had it. And you have not surrendered. You have not given in. You have said, no, this time, no. We're not going to give in. We're not going to surrender. No pasarán. Thank you for saying no pasarán. Thanks to all of you.
The minister will be available for the press now because he has to leave at 5 o'clock. Everyone else is welcome to stay here and to join us in a little personal debate. And, thank you very much for attending, and thank you again to the minister for coming.
Well, we have to be fast, but I'll try to be very precise and to the point. So if there's any questions, anybody wants to ask?
Yes, here. National Office from Slovenian Press Agency. Do you believe that with new government from Podemos and Socialists, it's possible to solve the Catalonian crisis? And also, what the result of the elections means for the solving of the Catalonian crisis?
Well, let's see. First of all, we must say the last Spanish elections were a big gamble on the side of Mr. Sanchez, and we must also say that he lost that gamble. He was going for a hard line. He was hoping to gain strength in these elections, and he actually lost strength. And he lost opportunities. The possibilities he had before the elections of striking deals or making agreements with different forces were bigger and more diverse than now. So he actually narrowed his path. But still, we never lose hope. That's the last thing we lose, and we haven't lost it. Even though, as I said, Mr. Sanchez, right now, at this very minute, is still not picking up the telephone when the maximum authority, elected authority through a parliamentary majority, the president of Catalonia, calls him. And that's still happening right now. So we must be very cautious about this, extremely cautious. There is a possibility. And this deal between the socialists and Podemos includes a clause. It's a very short agreement, just under 2 pages, but it includes a clause on an explicit text on Catalonia, saying that dialogue has to be promoted. So we welcome that sign. Right now it's just a sign. It's not anything more than that. We would like to see a reality. Plus, let me say one thing. You have the issue of the political prisoners and the exiles. And that is related to dialogue, because nothing would make dialogue easier. Nothing would cool down spirits in Catalonia better, and in Spain, than to have these people out of jail. In fact, These are the leaders for the Catalan people who have the most or the highest authority, who are most acknowledged and respected and even beloved as those who could lead these talks on the Catalan side. So if these people were free and they could go to this table and talk to the Spanish government, that would be an enormous progress. And that would make it easier to reach any sort of compromise, because the people in Catalonia, there's nobody right now, at this moment, the majority of people, even those who are against independence, there's no political leaders who are as widely respected and valued. You can see it in the polls, and there's a huge difference. All these leaders who are in jail, and also those in exile, are at the top ranking, way ahead people like me, who are in office. And it's natural. They're heroes. So whatever they say, whatever they compromise on, will probably be respected much better. So they're the ideal counterparts of Spanish power. And I really recommend them. And if you can tell them also, because sometimes they will hear you more than they listen to us, I advise them to take this into account. Nothing else? Well, folks, thank you very much for listening, and thank you so much for everything you have done, everything you are doing right now, and everything I'm sure, unfortunately, you will still have to do. Thank you for your help.